I wanted to make a few comments about multiclassing as a concept in game design. Multiclassing as a general term, meaning a character that mixes options from one set of abilities and another set of abilities. Now, obviously, not every RPG has classes, and even those that do have classes use them in different ways. For example, you have D&D, even in different editions of D&D. So let's take 5th edition, for example, just because everyone is likely to be familiar with that. Classes progress from levels 1 to 20 with supposedly increasingly powerful options as you get higher and higher. Some of those features will scale by character level, some will scale by class level. And so the idea, in theory, is that you are encouraged to continue going in one class because that's how you get access to the more powerful features. But you have the option, instead of taking a level in your current class, to start over on the new track of a different class and add those low-level, arguably weaker abilities to your total set, to your character's kit. So that's what I would call linear class progression. There's other games that do class progression in non-linearly. The most immediate example that comes to mind is Fabula Ultima, which does have classes, but the abilities are not arranged in a particular order. Every time you take a level in a class, you pick any of their abilities and gain one rank in that. Most abilities can only be taken once. Many abilities can be taken more than once. And so you can just take, one of those abilities. So these two different ideas of multiclassing result in very different incentive packages for players who are building a character. In 5th edition, you are incentivized to go up to the level of one class until you get the feature that you want, or the set of features that you want, and then stop and start another class until you get the features you want from that class, and so forth. Whereas in Fabula Ultima, it's more like, oh, I want this ability, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take that. It's much more like a buffet style. You're going through the line like, oh, I want some of this, and some of this, and some of this. And so it feels a lot more like you are customizing a character and building it from parts. I likened it unto like taking bits from different Lego sets and building your own creation with it. And for some reason, and I don't know if I can necessarily even articulate this completely, that feels better to me than, meeting the prerequisites to get the ability that you want and then starting a new class because your current class offers you nothing, either nothing more that you want or like not enough, not as much as this other class does. And it, like, 5e's style of multiclassing with linear class progression, and this is the same way in 3rd edition too, although multiclassing was, as far as my perception went, a lot less common in 3rd edition. It was a little more niche. Because it was so easy to screw up a character in 3rd edition. You had to really know what you were doing, and so multiclassing was only part of certain builds. In 5e, like, if you're not multiclassing, you're probably not playing optimally. So what happens is the 5e style of multiclassing, or this sort of like, every time you level up, you pick a new class. You can pick a new class. When you have linear multiclassing, it feels exploitative. It feels like you're cheating at the system in some way because, like, oh, I'm going to get, this is like clearly meant to be taken in a certain order in the larger context of 20 levels, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sneakily go get these low-level abilities from this other class and add them to my kit because they synergize so well. Or because my base kit is not meant to have these proficiencies, but I'm going to get them anyways because I'm going to multiclass here. I'm just going to dip. I'm going to dip one level in there. And it's weird that feels worse than non-linear classes multiclassing. But it does. At least to me. Maybe you're different. And then you have a lot of systems powered by the Apocalypse, Blades in the Dark, most prominent that come to mind, where you do still have like packages of character abilities, but they're not arranged in level. Like, you don't take a level in a playbook, you know. It's just that when your character advances, you can, depending on the system, there may be certain circumstances for this, you can take an ability from a different playbook, or you can take an ability from your playbook. That is, again, non-linear, but it's not quite the same. Like, it's not called multiclassing, but I mean, I guess it fundamentally is, right? And yet it feels better. It feels more like you are picking, you know, things out of piles in order to construct this specific concept that you have, instead of in some way cheating the system to combine abilities that weren't meant to work together. And 4th edition has a completely different take on multiclassing because it's not level based. Your levels always go into your base class, or classes if you're a hybrid character, but it's a whole other story. And you multiclass by taking feats, which give you, like, the first time you take a multiclass feat for a particular class, it gives you a limited version of that class's core kit. So for example, if you multiclass to a healing class, they will probably get their healing ability, which you can use once per day instead of twice per encounter, like the full class can. You don't get their proficiencies unless it says you do. Like a lot of these, I think, give you a skill proficiency, or skill training in one of the skills that is relevant to that class. And then you can take additional feats to swap out your main class's powers with the powers from that class. And so you can choose to sort of, like, you know, dial up how much you've multiclassed into this class. Notably, aside from that first feat that gives you their abilities, which might give you a power, you don't gain powers from the subsequent multiclassing feats. You only swap out powers, which means your overall number of powers does not increase. Which I think is really interesting design, that you're able to swap out powers, because presumably you wouldn't take these feats unless they are good for you in some way. I am still approaching this from the concept of a character build, because I don't think that multiclassing is a mechanic that, I don't ascribe to the idea that you might take mechanical options for role-playing reasons, that role-playing and mechanics do not have to be linked in that way, and they probably shouldn't be linked in that way. So, I think it's really interesting. Like, you're obviously going to be gaining some benefit, but it's not by increasing the number of things that you have. It's by saying that thing that I could have is better for me than this thing that I can get without a feat. So I'm going to take a feat to switch those out. Presumably, my overall power has gone up due to synergies or versatility or what have you. But, like, the number of abilities that I have has not increased. And that's some game design that you don't usually see in a lot of places. Usually these kinds of character building decisions just give you new abilities. And that can get unwieldy in a game like D&D, where you have so many abilities to start with. Gaining new abilities usually is a very sharp increase in power. If you have more than someone else, that means you are probably more powerful than them, just on the whole. So when people are talking about multiclassing, and I'm gonna make another video on this because I think that multiclassing is one of the big mechanical weaknesses of 5th edition. Maybe I have talked about this. I'm not sure. I will review. But, like, the multiclassing system, it can be done in so many different ways that I don't think it has to be done the way that 5th edition is doing it. And I think that it is actively detrimental. You know what? I'm not going to make another video. I'm going to talk about it now. The way that 5th edition does multiclassing, where you can just sort of freely take levels in any class you want, it inherently breaks balance. You can't have a fully functional character at low levels without also opening up your system. You can't have a fully functional character at low levels with this multiclassing system in place, because so many things are required for a character to feel complete, to be able to do their job, to contribute, to be durable enough. You know, these things that require the game to be functional at first level. You can't really have that without without multiclassing becoming busted because you just spend one level dip. A one level dip is relatively cheap in the scope of a full character build. And so if they can get all that stuff, you're basically doubling your character worth by taking one level in that. So what do? What's the solution? Well, what 5th edition did was, instead of fix multiclassing, was just push the stuff that should be at first level over the 3 levels, because 3 levels is way too big an investment for that kind of stuff, unless it's a really significant boost to your overall build. So characters are not really complete until, some people say 3rd, some people say 4th. For the sake of this argument, we'll say 3rd. You're not a real character. Most classes don't even have their subclass abilities until 3rd. And you're incredibly fragile too, but that's another deal. The reason why this is specifically to insulate multiclassing. It's like a 2-level tax before you get to the 3rd level, and then between all 3 of those levels, you have the 1st level, like a baseline character. And I think playing below 3rd level in 5th edition is it's really not advisable in general. Because you're not a complete character until, some classes feel incomplete even at higher levels, to be honest. But that's neither here nor there. So I think it's probably the worst possible solution they could have come up with. Isn't it? Like fix multiclassing, fix the system that is breaking your class progression. That's the obvious solution, right? But what do I know?